I don't know what they have to say. It makes no difference anyway. Whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it. Your proposition may be good, but let's have one thing understood. Whatever it is, I'm against it. And even when you've changed it or condensed it, I'm against it. I'm opposed to it. On general principles, I'm opposed to it.
Hey, I'm Michael Patton, and I'm really excited about this because I am going to be able to shut down everything that Samson says. And I should be able to do that because I'm the president of Credo House Ministries, and I've got this THM from DTS. Now listen to what he has to say.
Hey, I'm Samson Covatch. I'm from the Theology Pit, and I'm really excited that Michael's going to shut down everything that I have to say. That makes me excited. I have a MAR from TSM. I'll say it like that. This is Divergent Theology, where we take topics. Michael and I both have different backgrounds theologically, and we sort of clash them together, and we see what happens when the world of theology actually doesn't agree with itself. What I'm going to be doing here in this episode is we're going to talk about the way I'm understanding the relationship between faith and justification.
Okay.
And how it differs from everything else. So what we basically outlined was that no matter what, no matter how we sliced it, Protestantism...
Let me see if I can give the outline.
Go ahead. Yeah, please do.
See if I got it right. Okay, so far we've got this idea within Protestantism, a focus upon faith, and the faith has become so central that it has displaced the object of our faith. And therefore, when we're talking about, having faith or faith bringing about justification, then faith itself becomes some type of not just an instrument, but an instrument that you have to use in order to be justified. Therefore, it is a work that has to be implemented. Whatever it's given to you, whatever it's infused in you, however you put it, it's still the same. You still have to exercise it in order to be saved, and you may have to exercise it continually through the grace of God to be saved. Am I getting this good?
I think so. Yeah, I think that you summarized that really well. I mean, the only thing that I would add to it, besides work, is the idea of merit, and just defining merit as anything that you do that motivates God to look favorably upon you. But I think
Gotcha.
that I think that you pretty much summarized in one nice statement the broad view of Protestantism with the relationship to faith and merit. And there's really three central.
And did I express your problem with it? Because last time you really did.
Okay. And hopefully I did a good job in these last few episodes in showing what each not necessarily tradition, but what each view kind of holds to, and the tension that's there, the very strong tension that's pushing it towards that like work-like mentality.
I enjoy this. I enjoy really thinking about these things that, you think you've already got down. There's so much of your theology that you really think you have down, but it's taking that little bit apart and putting it back together. And I'm enjoying this. I think you've taken it apart well.
Okay. Thank you. And well, this is, I mean, honestly, if we could think about like, how do you do Semper Reformanda? I think that this is a really good way of doing it. Just looking back through what have we done? What do we think? And
you're right. And Semper Reformanda has always been big to you. So explain that.
Yeah. So that's just always reforming, that we're not reforming for the sake of reforming, just for its own sake, but as God, brings things through the Christian community and brings up these questions, that we take an honest look at it. And one thing my presbytery said to me was, but before I agreed to, join their denomination, was that we do not treat the Westminster Confession as the Bible. We treat the Bible as the Bible. And sometimes we start doing that with our doctrine. And we look at it, and it comes to the point where somebody asks you a question. Well, I can't tell you what anyone thinks now, but I can tell you what they thought 400 or 500 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's what we think. And so that's, and I know in the theology program, you've discussed the difference between tradition and traditionalism.
Yeah.
And really, what is tradition, but, peer pressure from dead people, let's be honest, but, but there's three, with doing Semper Reformanda, it's just always reforming, always kind of thinking about that. So there's three different, I guess, focuses or foci, I suppose, would be the right word when it comes to this. And anthropocentric is the first one.
Okay.
That this is man-centered, that man is doing something. The other is theocentric.
Okay.
And that is God-centered. That and that would fall under the idea of the decrees and those sort of things taking place. And the third one, I think, that gets the least amount of notice is the Christocentric view.
Yeah.
And the Christocentric view is highlighted depending on the scholars that you read. I mean, you brought up in the last series that we did, you brought up Douglas Moo, and his commentary. Well, if you read his commentary on Galatians, and then you read someone like Martinius C. de Boer's commentary on Galatians, you see a very different approach to them. And as my professor said when I took Galatians, he said, in the sake of interest, Moo is boring and de Boer is interesting.
I don't know if I can agree with that, because Moo's actually my favorite commentary.
Oh,
it really is.
Well, good for you. But you know what?
Other guy's better than Moo. I actually like that series and the way that series is put together. Yeah. So that helps. Sometimes it isn't put together well. Like I don't really like the evangelical commentary on the New Testament. I don't like the Greek New Testament commentary. Mm-hmm. I mean, but I do like that one.
Yeah, and the thing, I think my I don't want to say
word biblical commentary. That's the worst to me.
Yeah. Well, it's like I had to do a review of Moo's commentary, and to be honest, like a friend of mine and I were in the same class together, and we said he could have cut 200 pages out of that commentary. It's almost like it was almost like, listen, he's getting paid by the page, and come HECK or high water, he was going to have 400 pages of that commentary, and that was it. But it was like what I expected, where de Boer was really interesting in the direction that he went with the apocalyptic understanding of Paul and that sort of thing, and Martin also is another one is pretty good. But one of the things that de Boer does that's really interesting in Galatians is that he looks at the third chapter of Galatians when it's talking about faith, and he sees it as being personified, because faith and Christ are so interchangeable within that he makes that connection and says that Christ is the faith that has come. So when we kind of move in that direction, and we take a Christocentric understanding of justification and say, what would this look like? What would it look like if we said, let's remove the Ordo Salutis, any of them, let's just get them, out of the way, and look at this afresh. Let's remove divine decrees. Let's remove like all of that stuff and just say, historically and from what we've looked at in these past episodes, what would this view look like? And so what I want to say before I move into this is that with this view, I'm not saying that any of the other views of justification are wrong. I'm just saying that it's possible they're incomplete.
Yeah.
Okay. And just like with the atonement theory, I'm not going to stand here and say that, any one of the atonement theories are wrong. I'm going to say by themselves, they're incomplete.
Except for ransom to Satan.
Even that I would say is,
come on, don't try to be so. You're such a divergent person.
It's incomplete because it's the ransom to Satan.
Wrong.
Yeah. So,
be corrected.
But there is a ransom that takes place. Okay. So
I'll give you that.
So it's just not the Satan. So there's the difference. But you can see the merit in a lot of them, and any of them you would take it and you would say that, okay, look, if you're trying to make the argument that it's this or the highway, then I would say that you're in error there. But the view itself, I would just say, is just incomplete. And once we put all this together, that's what we have. So I don't want anybody like watching this or listening to this thinking that I'm saying that whatever your view on justification is and whatever you hold to, that you're wrong. I just hopefully I'm going to be able to demonstrate where all the parts kind of fit together and how they fit together a little bit differently. So I'm actually going to be presenting a new soteriological understanding of the doctrine of justification by faith.
Right.
And I'm going to do it. And this is going to be the tricky part. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to try to preserve the doctrine historically while remaining biblically based and theologically sound within the church's teachings.
Okay.
It's a tall order. It really is. Okay. And as a bonus,
if I were me, I would just use subterfuge.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna. but because I know that, this is primarily going to be a Western audience scrutinizing this, that I'm going to add a bonus in where I'm going to show where the individual and the individual's faith falls in with this justification understanding. Okay. So this is going to be a new paradigm, and I'm going to call it the TPC view of justification for the theological, paradigmatic, canonic. Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. I am Samson Covatch. I'm the co-host of Divergent Theology and the host of the Theology Pit. Here to take a moment of your time to shamelessly plug some of our stuff that we do. Now, I know you've been asking yourself while you're watching these episodes of Divergent Theology, hey, how can I become a divergent theologian? Well, that's a great question. First thing you have to do, you have to know why you believe what you believe. And the reason for that is because you have to know what's in the realm of, let's say, non-heresy and the realm of heresy. You have to know how far you can go and diverge in each direction and still remain an Orthodox Christian. What's that? Yes, the best way to go about doing that, in my opinion, is to go to credohouse.org. Now, what I would recommend is you start off with the discipleship program. Discipleship program is a great way to get an introduction into, what you believe as a Christian. It's broken down into 10 sessions here. Michael's done a good job with this, looking at the Bible, mankind, the Trinity, Jesus, faith, living with God, those sort of things. It's in, 2 separate sections, but this is if you really are new to the faith, or kind of you're thinking of a way, hey, how in my church can I teach something? It's a great ministry tool. But you're saying, Samson, look, I'm already a Christian. I've been a Christian a while. I want to go deeper. Oh, okay. We have the theology program here. I would say you start off with your introduction to theology. You can find all of this stuff, credohouse.org, and go through the 6-course program, and you'll know a little bit more about why you believe what you believe. Now, as a divergent theologian, and I've, taught and worked with Credo House, even back when it was called Reclaiming the Mind. On my podcast, you notice the Theology Pit, where you can go to theologypit.com. You can get great things like mugs and shirts. I have some new shirts that I've made up. Says I can do all things through Scripture taken out of context. Support the ministry that way. You'll notice that I diverge a little bit more. I'm neither a Calvinist nor am I an Arminian. I'm free to do that. There are other things out there, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But that's where you can be a divergent theologian. So check out the sites, check out the books and all the wonderful resources that we have at both of these sites and the podcasts. Don't forget Theology Unplugged, one of the biggest podcasts, theological podcasts on Apple. Another nice little tip, when you're learning Greek, use cards. Use your Greek cards as bookmarks. It's great. Apokrynomai. Answer indeed. Oh, Michael, what are you thinking?
Man, that's too big a word to be. Just come up with something different right now.
TPC view? That's why I'm calling it that. Sure. Fine. The biblically Christological view. There you go. How about that? Okay. That won't irritate anybody.
I can pull that one off.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to say, what I'm going to say here first off is that our view of justification by faith is a trilateral understanding. Okay. And it's a trilateral understanding of the faith of the justifying agent for the one who is not righteous.
Okay.
Okay. So it's based on someone else.
Yeah.
All right. So it's someone who is righteous and doesn't need to be justified.
Okay.
Therefore, their faith that they possess can only be for the benefit of another.
Okay.
And I'm speaking only in justification. I'm not talking about sanctification. I'm not talking about glorification, just in justification here.
Yeah.
All right. So if we look at the theological function of faith, which is the righteousness of God and the faith and faithfulness of Jesus Christ, then necessarily the faith of Christ cannot merit justification for himself. I think that we would all agree with that. We would say
the faith of Christ or in Christ. Did you say?
No. Okay. Jesus Christ's faith can't merit justification for him because he does not need to be justified.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I just so we're clear on like where we're starting here.
I got you.
Okay. And he has an eternally perfect faith anyways. So it's not like his faith needs to increase. It's not like, something needs to happen or anything like that. Yeah. Therefore, his faith acts on behalf of another who is in need of being justified. Okay. And this justification is not attained by Christ's faithfulness to the law, because Paul teaches in Galatians 2:21 that if righteousness could come through the law, then Christ died for nothing.
Okay.
So Christ's faithfulness.
This is a little bit different turn here.
Mm-hmm. So Christ's faithfulness is to our benefit in sanctification and glorification, and should be understood within salvation as a whole, salvation proper. And Christ's faithfulness to God through the cross enables us to partake of this faith, so that as Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5:21, so that in him we would become the righteousness of God. Okay. So the faith and faithfulness of Christ and the righteousness of God, a warranted belief in the one who declares the ungodly to be righteous. Romans 4:5. All right. So the evidence that God is righteous and Christ is faithful is manifested in those who have been declared just. Those justified believe on the God who makes the dead alive and summons the things that do not exist as though they already do. Romans 5:17. So the manifestation, no, that actually might be Romans 4:17. Sorry, that I had a typo here. So the manifestation of evidence of that the theological function of faith is reality, is that the faith is given as a seal by the Holy Spirit for the veracity of God's righteousness.
Is there any way you can put that down in just one sentence, short sentence?
Yes. That was
very heavy.
Yeah. Okay. So the first part of this trilateral understanding is that if God is truly righteous and Jesus Christ is truly faithful, then there is going to be a physical manifestation of that within anyone who is a believer.
Okay.
And that is the evidence that Jesus Christ is faithful and God is righteous.
So you're saying there's going to be evidence of this faith as far as works are concerned. They're going to do something, whether it's love God, trust in God.
They're going to believe in God. They're going to trust in God. That this is that first part of the faith. So this is that first understanding of what faith is. Okay. And Paul makes this this point through different chiastic structuring in some of his works that I found really interesting. And we're not going to get into all that, because that's really when you speak about chiasm or chiastic structures if someone's just listening, it's going to be very difficult to follow along. So I'm just going to ask that you trust me on that, and I'll post it somewhere and just tell people, hey, you can go check it out. But the places that you can find it are Galatians 2:16. That Lewis Martin found a chiastic structure within there that's really interesting. And if Romans chapter 3 verses 21 through 5:2, if that is like an expanse on Galatians 2:16, we should see the same type of chiastic structure. So those are just those two things real quickly, but I'm not going to get into the details on those. Okay. So that's basically the first leg of this stool of what faith is. And more or less how it's
Are,
come to
are
be
all
in the
three
reality of
legs
it.
telling us what faith is?
Yes. So all
Okay.
of this is faith. So this one idea, this one concept of the word faith is going to encompass all of this. So you
Okay.
see
So
how it's a lot.
defining faith, and we got a triangle underneath, and
Mhm.
the first part is that faith itself is from the faithfulness of the one who has it, not the one who is given to it.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And what it does is it.
That goes back to what we talked about last time, right? The
Yeah.
passages that can be translated
Mhm.
in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's all. It's all a part of it. So that's the theological function of faith. All right, the next one is the paradigmatic function of faith. And this is the faith, it's the understanding of faith within justification that's specifically for the benefit of another. Okay, so this is the faith that comes from God through Christ's faith and is exercised by the church as both corporate and individual. Okay, so the relationship of those who have faith for the benefit of someone else has been demonstrated in, the works of Cyril of Jerusalem. I talked about that before in his catechism, and when he's talking about faith, and he's giving these different points of, Lazarus being raised from the dead, like whose faith was that raised him from the dead? The paralytic who was let down through the thatch roof in Mark, and who had the faith there? Was it his friends that brought him? So this is where the paradigmatic understanding of faith is, that faith of believers actually has an impact on other people. Okay, and we can look at this to say, well, this is why we would say that prayer works. This is why, the gospel message has power. This is why it goes out, because it is with this faith of Christ, as the body of Christ, as we're taking this out, that actually has a type of authority to it and a type of power that moves and changes people. So it is a faith that somebody does not possess, but the effects of that faith from someone that does have it is effectual on them.
Okay, so you may explain this in the last point, but in this one, then you have people who are looking to Christ. Are you talking now kind of almost in the example theory of the atonement? I know it's not the atonement, but placing this on faith and saying Christ's example has effects upon our faith by making us follow in the same footsteps. Is that it?
Well, that's a part of it. So, okay, this has, think of it more from a missions perspective. Okay. Romans 10, Paul rhetorically saying, how are they to call on one they haven't, believed in? How are they to believe in the one they haven't heard of? The whole thing is that unless you go out and you take this faith, because if you're a Christian and Christ, his faith was for you, then the faith that you possess has been given to you, not for your benefit, but actually for the benefit of someone else. You need to take that faith, which is Christ, to someone else. And that's the paradigmatic function. And I think that's what Paul's getting at in Romans 10 there with, people going out.
So the faith itself, that it's not an example, then it is the actual faith that you're taking of Jesus, that he had, his faithfulness. You're taking that and you're telling others about that. So it's kind of like, in another way you put it, I mean, I know it's more complex than this, but in another way, you are looking to Christ and you're saying, look at what Christ did. Look what he how he lived his life for us and was obedient. And look what, and basically it's look at his faith for us. And since he did that, then we want to adopt it ourselves.
No, take it one step further than that. The faith that you're taking is Jesus Christ himself.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is why miracles can be performed in the sight of unbelievers.
Okay. I'm really not getting this one then.
Okay. So
the faith is Jesus Christ.
Yes.
I mean, okay, whenever I think of faith, I think of an action. Mm-hmm. I think of a place where you're resting in Christ. You're ceasing from your works and trusting. But then you say it is Christ. I don't see the like you got ontological values for things. The ontology of faith, it doesn't exist, but the ontology of Christ does. He's a person, flesh and bones.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to put those two together and say, okay, now are we redefining faith to such a degree that now it doesn't really mean the same thing I thought it did, and so we need a different definition for it?
Well, I'm not saying throw away your old understanding. I'm saying that your old understanding is incomplete. Hey, thanks for listening to Divergent Theology. You can visit our websites at credohouse.org or thetheologypit.com and make a donation. Support the ministry that way. Now, here's a quick look at next week's Divergent Theology. Perhaps missions should not be under ecclesiology, but missions should be under theology proper. Because this is the way that God does. God is constantly coming out and seeking us and bringing us back. And so this paradigmatic function of faith is us being those workers and us going out and reaching and grabbing people.